Hi, this is Nancy Muscatello from the podcast Scamanda. I hope you enjoyed listening to this episode of Scandal Water.
Welcome to Scandal Water,
where we cover the stories that have captivated the entertainment world.
I'm Candy, a longtime educator and community theater actress.
And I'm Ashley, a writer and co-founder of a local theater group.
We're two friends who share a love of entertainment.
From true crime docuseries, to blockbuster movies, to classic TV, to Broadway shows, and everything in between.
Each week, I share a compelling story related to pop culture.
And I chime in using my trivia junkie brain.
We stick to the facts until it's time to settle into our armchairs at the end.
Then we're simply two women with a strong cup of tea and even stronger opinions.
We're Scandal Water.
And if this sounds like your cup of tea,
follow the show on your favorite podcast app or the Scandal Water Podcast YouTube channel.
Oh, it's that time of day. Tune in and hear what the ladies say. It's time to bend your ear when the silver screen appears. Stories about the stage and screen and everything in between. So come on and join the fun. The curtain opens in 3, 2, 1.
Hello, Ashley.
hello, Candy.
Are you ready for our final episode in our theme, Order in the Court?
I am ready.
This is going to be a big one.
I know.
This is going to be so big. In fact, I'm going to start slightly differently.
Okay.
I'm kind of testing a little theory. We'll just see what happens. What I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you not to think hard about this.
Oh.
Just answer off the top of your head.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the first thoughts that come to mind when I mention To Kill a Mockingbird?
Scout. Boo. I think about Atticus Finch. I think about the film, Gregory Peck. Is it like word association?
You're doing great.
I think about Harper Lee and Justice, Courtroom. Yeah.
Nice. That was great. My wondering was if for most people, if mentioning that title, To Kill a Mockingbird, would actually make them think of the film. Now, you, being such a literary person, you went straight to big picture. You were saying all of it.
Yeah.
So it did not, my theory did not hold with you.
Aw, sorry.
But I did wonder. I wonder this.
Well, hey, how about this? I was thinking of Scout in the movie when I said that.
Were you?
I was picturing little Jean Louise from the film, and when I said Atticus, I was picturing Gregory Peck.
That's the thing. And this was, again, this is just pure speculation on my part. But as I was researching this, I was thinking, I bet when you say To Kill a Mockingbird, a lot of people immediately think of the film. As you said, Gregory Peck as Atticus, Brock Peters as Tom Robinson, Mary Badham as Scout Finch. And I can see why you would go straight to the film, right? Because it received 8 Oscar nominations.
Yeah.
It won 3 of them. You had so many things about this film that were just amazing. In fact, it makes me think of when we did A Few Good Men, and it would show up all the time whenever you would Google best courtroom dramas. Well, this also comes up. Every time you Google top, courtroom dramas, you're going to see To Kill a Mockingbird.
Oh, I think I've said it before, the quote I think of is "Stand up, Jean Louise, your father's passing." Mm-hmm. That's what I think of.
Yeah, absolutely. So just to offer just a couple more thoughts, this movie was one of the films listed in no particular order in a 2024 Time magazine article naming their pick for the top 20 courtroom dramas. Mm-hmm. And To Kill a Mockingbird is number 3 out of 63 on IMDb's list of courtroom movies. So I get it. I get why this movie would stand out to people. But researching this, it just really hit me in the face how much bigger this is because, of course, it started with a book. You've already mentioned that. It started with the book that won the Pulitzer Prize in 1961. Mm-hmm. People call it an American masterpiece. They call it an American classic. Just this past December, I saw a Reader's Digest article where they published their list of the 100 of the best books of all time, and they listed To Kill a Mockingbird as number 2. But here's the interesting part. Here we have these 2 works, the book version, the film version, both so critically acclaimed, both so beloved to people, and in some ways timeless, because the issues that come up in it are still
a problem.
Just as relevant today. But over the years, there actually has been some criticism about elements of the work that people think have not aged well.
Okay.
And following that train of thought, it's interesting because I actually had the chance to see the play version.
Yeah, I did too.
In 2023 with Richard Thomas in the role of Atticus.
Oh, did you see it in person or on television?
I saw it in person.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah. And I didn't know going into it that the adaptation was going to be different.
Oh.
And immediately saw that it was.
Oh, yes. Wasn't that also some controversy because there was
changes.
And this is what Jeff Daniels was in.
Absolutely.
Oh, okay.
So when I say that this episode is about To Kill a Mockingbird,
It's a lot of it.
is going to be so jam-packed because we're going to hit on all of it.
Wow. Okay.
Every bit of it.
Ooh.
So before we continue on, tell me, you said obviously you've seen the movie. Now you've read the book as well.
I have.
Okay.
I've seen the play. I think I've read the play, seen the play, read the book, seen the movie, and little random trivia that again matters to no one. When I was writing the Hepburn Girls, I had a character who was supposed to be this very wise, kind mentor figure to the main character, and I could not figure out how to write him. So I based him on Atticus Finch.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I totally see that because for me, people ask me about my favorite books. I'm going to list that as one of my favorite books. We named our cat Scout. You know, we had a Scout. I think one of the things that stands out to me about reading the book, which is what I read first, and of course I love the movie. I thought the film adaptation was amazing.
I hope they never remake it.
Amazing.
I hope it stays that forever.
Yeah, but one of the things that I remember reading it was, and this is going to sound so goofy maybe, but you read a lot of books and you're like, that's an amazing book. That's really well written. But I remember reading To Kill a Mockingbird and understanding the term literary. You know what I'm saying? Like that read as a literary novel to me. I was like, the language, just the whole flow of it, everything about it. I was like, oh, I see. This is literary. So there was a beauty to the language. And then, of course, there was a beauty to that child's perspective.
Yeah.
And then the themes. I mean, the themes. So much there. But we're going to go back to the very beginning. And I'm actually going to kick this off by letting you hear just the tiniest little clip from Harper Lee herself.
I was born in a little town called Monroeville, Alabama, on April 28, 1926.
Isn't that cool to hear her voice?
It is cool. She sounds so literary.
Such a Southern lady.
It is.
Such a Southern lady. That soundbite comes from an audio recording that was released by the UCLA Library in 2016. A Los Angeles Times article said, quote, "The 11-minute interview conducted in 1964 by Roy Newquist for New York radio station WQXR is believed to be one of the last the reclusive Lee granted to the media."
Wow, she is a fascinating figure to me. And I don't know if we'll go into this deeper, if this is the only place to mention it, but I feel like she was it was so successful beyond even her own imagining that she got scared of it. And she could not follow it up because she didn't know how to follow it up. And just talking about John Grisham last week, how he just kept writing hit after hit after hit, and she just...
It almost paralyzed her.
That's a good word for it. It paralyzed her. I remember a long time ago watching a documentary about her trying to come up with the next one, and she just ended up abandoning it.
Absolutely.
She couldn't do it.
Yeah.
I compare her sometimes to Agatha Christie, who wrote amazing works and then wrote some stinkers. I mean, yes, they're good, but they're not as good as the other ones. But I feel like if Harper had just pushed through and written a stinker and then gone, okay, like I was saying, does John need to write a stinker at some point just to break that, oh my gosh, the pressure? Of course, it doesn't bother him.
Yeah, he doesn't seem to feel the pressure.
No, but I talked about this a little last time is I wrote, it's not even my play, I wrote an adaptation of A Christmas Carol, and it was so well received, more than I even thought it could be. And then now I'm sort of feeling that. I'm like, oh, I don't know.
The pressure's there now.
Yeah, the pressure's there.
Yeah.
What do I do to follow this? How can I, what if they don't like it? Okay, so what? I need to get to the point of just write it.
Just write it.
Just write it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think your advice is amazing. Just push through.
Sorry, I just wanted to get all that out.
No, I love it. And we're going to actually come back to that later.
Good.
Yeah. But back to this particular little interview. Many have referred to it as the only known recorded interview with Harper Lee about To Kill a Mockingbird. So I'm actually going to play another clip or two from this as we go along. But she said it herself, you heard her, Harper Lee was born in Monroeville, as she told us, which is a small town in Alabama, but she was born as Nell Harper Lee. Yeah. The population, by the way, in her small town was about 1,300, and Harper's family was a little bigger. She was the youngest of 4 children. Her older siblings were Alice Finch, who was 15 years older, Louise, who was 10 years older, and Edwin, who was around 6 years older than...
So one was 15 years older? Wow, okay.
Yeah. Now, about her name. Nell. Okay, it was spelled Nelle. And that's what she went by. Like her
Nell.
family, her friends, all her life, they knew her as Nell. The name was given to her as a tribute to her grandmother, whose name was Ellen. So it was Ellen backwards.
Oh.
Yeah. But when it came time to get published, Harper was afraid, Nell Lee.
Oh, yeah.
And
okay.
also the spelling.
Yeah.
She thought people were going to call her Nellie.
Yeah.
And she hated
Nellie.
to be called Nellie. So she decided to go by Harper, and that's what we're going to call her just for sake of keeping this simple. We're
And
gonna call her
everybody
Harper.
knows, we all know her as Harper, but her family knew her as Nell.
Harper's father was Amasa Coleman Lee. Most people called him AC, so I'm going to call him AC as well. He was a prominent lawyer in their town, as well as the owner of and an editor for the local newspaper, and also a member of the state legislature for more than a decade.
These guys with the multiple careers,
Right?
amazing.
Like, what? By all accounts, AC was a highly respected, kind man who was an important member of his community. And we all know Harper adored her father. She told Life magazine in 1964 that, quote, "My father is one of the few men I've known who has genuine humility, and it lends him a natural dignity. He has absolutely no ego drive, and so he is one of the most beloved men in this part of the state."
What a great guy.
Can you imagine having that said about you?
No.
Like, that is such a tribute.
No.
Yeah. Well, just as a side note, I just put this in because I think it's fun. Several sources, one of those being Wikipedia, another being a Time magazine article, said that the Lee family actually had some type of connection to General Robert E. Lee through AC's side of the family. So this is a Southern family which, had long roots in the community.
Yeah.
Harper's mother was Frances Cunningham Finch Lee, who was known by friends and neighbors as Miss Fanny.
Oh.
Now, I could not find a lot of definitive information about Harper's mom, but what many sources did say in a very vague way was that she probably suffered from some type of mental illness.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
some speculated that it might have been a form of a bipolar disorder. Some just called it a nervous disorder. But what I picked up on was that in terms of thinking about the parallel to Scout's situation, it was not the same because Harper's mom lived until she was 25 years old. Now, she lost her mom at a young age. 25 is young, but it wasn't as a toddler. When I would see references, it would be things like she was a quirky woman, she was odd, she was a bit distant from Harper. Things, she might be out on the porch in the middle of the night doing things. I mean, she was just, I think, I don't know, not the easiest mom to have. Harper's older sister, Alice, who ended up following her father's footsteps and becoming a lawyer, described Harper as being a tomboy and very athletic, and other people agreed with Alice on this point. In fact, a neighbor once said, quote, "A dress on the young Nell would have been as out of place as a silk hat on a hog."
I like how you used your Southern accent, too.
I love that quote. But because of her tomboyishness and also the fact that he was the closest to her in age, Edwin was the one that Harper played with the most, right? Well, I mean, at least until he got older. But while it's funny because later when the book would come out and people would ask Harper, she would sometimes be a little coy and not definitively say, yes, I based Jem on Edwin.
Yeah.
But it's clear.
It's clear.
Right? It's clear. Now, just as a sad side note, Edwin actually ended up passing away when he was only 30, leaving behind a wife and 2 young children. He died of a cerebral hemorrhage, according to most of the sources I saw. But we all know this part. Harper Lee also had another famous playmate, Truman Struckfus Persons, better known as Truman Capote, and of course the inspiration for Dill in the book. Truman Capote reportedly was proud of the fact when the book came out that Dill had been based on him and was quoted as telling some of his friends that,
This is me.
This is me, yeah. Harper had written him into her book as the character
That is pretty
Dill.
cool.
Like Dill, Truman had a difficult childhood. After his parents divorced, most sources seem to agree that Truman spent somewhere between 3 to 5 years living full-time in Monroeville, Alabama, with his middle-aged relatives. You know, these were family members on his mother's side. Now, he was treated well by them, and it was during this time that he and Harper became next-door neighbors and very close friends. But it also caused struggles. You know, the fact that he had been sent away by his mother to go live with relatives, this is something that people would talk about his feelings of abandonment. You know, this was something that really did cause a struggle all his life. Now, later, he left Alabama. His mom brought him back to live with her and the new stepfather. And so he was called back, but he continued to visit Alabama on summer breaks or other long breaks. And so this helped him to keep this friendship with Harper strong. They kept it going. To dig into their friendship just a tiny bit more, because actually, we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about this whole Truman Capote Harper Lee thing.
Okay.
All right. Gerald Clark, the author of the book Capote, A Biography, said this about the two of them. Quote, Harper was the tomboy on the block, a girl who could beat the steam out of most boys her age, or even a year or so older, as Truman was. Neither had many other real friends. Nell was too rough for most other girls, and Truman was too soft for most other boys.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But they had a fantastic time together. They were both very literary. They were readers. They had strong imaginations. I saw in different sources they would act out adventures from like the Rover Boys series. They would also, this is a famous thing that people talk about, they made up their own stories. According to Harper's New York Times obituary when it came out, they talk about Nell's father giving Harper this old Underwood typewriter, and she and Truman would trade that thing off. They would type up stories. Sometimes they would write them together. It was a big thing.
That's
It was a
neat.
big thing. Yeah. They also spent quite a bit of time at the courthouse in Monroeville watching Harper's father at work. Truman said once in an interview that we went to trials instead of going to the movies.
That's kind of cool. That's kind of real cool.
It's very cool. And I know that the people who are listening to this who are familiar with To Kill a Mockingbird are seeing the parallels, and they're understanding the reason why we're going through all this is because
It's setting up the story.
it's setting this up. This is going to come to play.
It also really is so neat and fascinating to me when you have two people who end up being so famous that you're talking about them decades after their passing, are friends as children.
I know. This whole thing was fascinating to me. Harper and Truman's bond as childhood friends remained tight, even while Truman was living with his mother and stepfather in New York and for a short time in Connecticut. But moving back to Harper and the timeline of her life, after she graduated from high school, she attended Huntingdon College, a private school for women in Montgomery, where she was again doing some of her literary work. She contributed a few works to the college paper and a literary magazine, but she was actually only there a year before she transferred to the University of Alabama to study law. Now, my understanding is her dad, of course, was encouraging this.
Yeah.
She knew law. She had that background with it, so she's doing well. But she continued to write. While at Alabama, she edited a college humor magazine called The Rammer Jammer, and she also wrote for the college newspaper, The Crimson White. Roll Tide, by the way. This is where Camden went to
Okay,
college
yes.
and Bree, so I'd have to throw that in there. But Harper was partway through her final year when she decided to leave school.
No, why,
Just
Harper?
6 months before finishing her degree.
I know you're going to be just fine, but why?
You know why? Because she had the opportunity to participate in a summer program at Oxford University in England where
fine.
she wrote.
Okay, fine.
And she came back deciding she was going to be a writer.
But still, 6 months left.
I know. Her dad was not happy.
I bet. I'm with Dad. That's a lot of money.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of a parent perspective, to me, this gets worse because immediately she decided, I'm moving to New York to pursue my writing career. But here's the thing, okay? I looked it up. I was like, why? What makes somebody from Alabama decide, yep, I'm going straight to New York. I'm going to do this.
Well, Truman's there, right?
There you go.
Yeah.
That's the primary reason. Yes, we obviously have, somebody who wants to experience big city life. She was from a small town. That was part of it. I want to
What a
experience big
culture
city
shock.
life. Yeah. And also, this is supposed to be the hub of, literary works. So those are two good reasons, but you nailed it. The biggest reason was her friend, Truman Capote, lived there, and he was already making a splash.
Was he? Okay.
Oh, yeah. He already had 2 books published by the time Harper moved there.
Was his first book the In Cold Blood book? Do you happen to know?
It was not.
Okay.
No. His first book was Other Voices, Other Rooms, where, by the way, story, Harper inspired the character, this tomboy named Adabelle Tompkins.
Well, that's a darling. They inspired characters in each other's books. What a love language.
I know, I love it. She actually, I did not write this down, but later she was the inspiration for another small character in a later work as well. But anyway, this move made sense because you want to break into writing and your friend's already doing it.
Yeah.
He's introducing you to all the right people. He knows he's got the connections.
It's not
Go
what
there.
you know, it's who you know.
Right. So it was 1949 when she moved into what was described as a cold water apartment in Manhattan. You want to know what that is?
Is it a bathroom?
No. It's exactly what it sounds like.
A water apartment?
They only had cold water. You didn't have any hot water.
Oh, a cold water apartment.
Yeah, one of these old buildings in New York before it became illegal to sell this to people, to rent this to people, you would have to heat your water before you could take a bath or wash things. Yeah. To support herself, Harper first worked briefly at a bookstore. Then she took a job as an airline reservation agent, first for Eastern Airlines and later for the British Overseas Airways Corporation. And she would write at night using a desk made from a door. Wow. I know. Years went by like this. Harper would work her long hours at her job, and then she would try to write at night.
She's tired.
Her progress was very, very slow. And then something amazing happened. Do you know what happened?
I don't.
I love this. I'm going to read this straight from her obituary. Michael and Joy Brown, a couple she met, meaning Harper, of course, a couple she met through Mr. Capote, believed in her. Mr. Brown, a lyricist, had just received a large check for his work on a musical fashion show for Esquire magazine, and on Christmas Day 1956, he and his wife presented Miss Lee with a check equal to a year's salary.
Now this is sounding familiar, yeah.
At the place where she was an airline reservationist,
Yeah.
and a note that read, "You have 1 year off from your job to write whatever you please. Wow. Merry Christmas."
Wow, what good friends.
Can you imagine?
No.
A full year salary. Okay, so of course, now she's writing like crazy. She develops a small portfolio of short stories, which she took to an agent, Maurice Crane. He suggested she try her hand at writing a novel. 2 months later, she came back with the first 50 pages of a manuscript that she had called Go Set a Watchman. Now that agent, Maurice Crane, got the publishing company, J.B. Lippincott, to take on Harper Lee's novel. Just so you know, J.P. Lippincott would later be acquired by Harper and Row, and then eventually it became HarperCollins. Okay. All right. So this was good news, obviously. This publishing company had bought her work. She's not got a lot of money coming in at this point, but, some kind of an advance. And this is 1957. Bad news. They tell her this is not ready for publication.
Yeah.
There's a lot of work to be done here.
Yeah.
Okay. They assigned her to work with an experienced editor, a woman by the name of Tay Hohoff. And Tay described Harper's work as, quote, more a series of anecdotes than a fully conceived novel. But then she also said, this is in a different interview, she said, you know what though? Harper's work seemed to show promise. And she commented, quote, the spark of the true writer flashed in every line. So she saw the potential, but she knew it needed work. So Tay was the one who guided Harper to rewrite the book, encouraging her to tell the story from the perspective of a child. Because that first draft that came...
Was it from the dad's perspective?
No, it was from a woman who was like 26 years old.
Oh, okay.
It was like an older scout.
Oh,
yeah.
It could have been like whatever age Harper was at the time, maybe.
Yeah. So... these two, Tay and Harper, would end up working together for the next couple of years on this book and becoming very close friends as Tay supported Harper through that long revision and editing process. And it was no easy job. There was a fun quote in Wikipedia that said, once during the long editorial process, Lee lost confidence in herself and threw her manuscript out her window and into the snow. When she called her editor in tears, Hohoff told her to march outside immediately and pick up those pages. And of course she did. So finally in 1959, Harper Lee finished the novel. And of course, it's still a process. So while she's waiting for it to go through, I think they call it the galleys.
10 years. She's been in New York for 10 years.
She's been in New York for 10 years at this point, yeah. So she's waiting for the publication process to run its course. And Truman Capote calls her with a proposal. He told her that... he was going to Kansas to research the shocking murder of a farm family called the Clutters, named the Clutters, and he asked if she wanted to come along as his assistant researchist.
Okay. It's not researcher, but researcher.
Oh, no, that was the name he gave it. That was a
Oh.
assistant researchist.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So this is going to be in cold blood.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes. Harper loved the idea. She later told Newsweek, quote, he said it would be a tremendously involved job and would take two people. The crimes intrigued him, and I'm intrigued by crime. And boy, I wanted to go. It was deep, calling to deep. This was so cool to me. For months, Harper was like his sidekick. She went with Truman Capote everywhere he went as he interviewed police investigators and local people, anybody who might have anything to offer about the people involved in this or something they saw, what went on. They went to them. Now, because Truman could be so quirky and flamboyant,
Right.
many people spoke about this. Harper was invaluable. It was her
To give him
warmth.
legitimacy.
Well, she's the one who got the doors opened. A lot of people wouldn't have even talked to him, but her warmth, her down-to-earth manner was what encouraged people to actually speak with them, agree to be interviewed. In fact, Nancy Clutter was the daughter who was murdered, and her boyfriend, Bobby Rupp, was the last person to see the family before the murders occurred. And so he at one point said that during the interview, it was Harper who asked him most of the questions. And he said he probably would have walked out if it had just been Truman who wanted to talk to him.
Interesting.
Yeah, because it was off-putting to them, I guess, Truman's manner.
We've actually talked about this book in school, and what they said, and I don't know, this is just one of the instructors had said that Truman did all these interviews. Now, they never mentioned Harper, but that Truman did all these interviews and never took any notes and then came home and wrote it, but was getting stuff verbatim. But to me, this sounds like if Harper's there, maybe Harper was the secretary and was making the notes so that he could write it.
Oh, you are making such a good inference, because here's the interesting part, okay? Now, just to finish that last thought first, Truman actually did give Harper some credit for opening the door for him. He said at one point, she was, quote, extremely helpful in, quote, making friends with the wives of the people I wanted to meet. Okay, so finishing that point.
Okay.
Now, to your point, several articles, one being a New Yorker article, said that Harper wrote copious notes
That makes
about what was
sense.
shared during the interviews, as well as her own impressions.
That makes sense.
She would go home then, back to the hotel room every night, flesh all that out, and then pass those on to Truman. Like, she would do things like, I remember, I didn't write this down, but she would notice the cat that was in the corner of the room, and she would be describing
Yeah.
it in this beautiful
Yeah.
literary prose, right? This man named Charles Shields wrote a biography on Harper Lee, and he reported it was something like 150 pages of notes that Harper Lee took for Truman Capote. And she also, she offered him suggestions. She would...
I wonder why they didn't say it was authored by both of them.
Well, he did write the draft himself. Like,
Okay.
he wrote the manuscript
But
himself.
still.
But she was very involved. And, for example, she offered a suggestion about trying to make the Clutter family a little more dynamic, like not so black and white.
Right.
And he didn't want to do that. He decided not to. So he didn't take all of her suggestions, but I think that's an example of the fact that she was offering thoughts about the meat of this book. It was not just, I am your secretary. You know what I'm saying? So when the manuscript came out, they also said that Harper gave very detailed feedback to the manuscript. All right. In Cold Blood was published in a serialized version of the story in 1965 before it actually came out as a book in 1966. And it was a hit. Critically, financially. I mean, it was big. It was on the bestseller list for weeks upon weeks. And of course, a movie then came out the next year based on the book. And if you look this up, many people consider In Cold
The
Blood
first true crime?
Yes, the first modern true crime novel. They credit Truman Capote for really pioneering this genre, right? But in spite of all this success, by the time In Cold Blood came out, the friendship between Harper and Truman was already starting to cool.
I just wonder if it had something to do with this book, because she did a lot. And everything I have heard about this has almost erased her from, and what I'm learning now. It just didn't make sense to me that this man could do all these interviews and come home and just, he was so much of a genius that he was just able to perfectly encapsulate this.
Well, that's interesting that you bring up that point, because that is a factor. Another factor has to do with To Kill a Mockingbird itself. But we're going to talk about all this when we come back from the break.
You got me. Okay. We love our sponsors. They help make our podcast possible, but we also know that some of you prefer to enjoy your tea without any interruptions. Well, if that's the case, you'll be excited to learn that you can now listen to Scandal Water free of sponsor ads on Apple Podcasts for only $4.99 a month or $49.99 a year. The best part? By subscribing, you'll also receive access to our exclusive bonus content. To sign up, just go to Apple Podcasts and search for Scandal Water Podcast, and you'll see the link. Thanks for helping us keep the tea brewing. Cheers!
All right, and we are back. And I promise that we're going to come back to that point about the friendship between the two of these people starting to, starting to cool. But first, let's go back in the timeline to 1960 because this is going to be part of it. Okay. To Kill a Mockingbird was published in July of 1960. And
after In Cold Blood.
Before.
Oh, before. Okay. Gotcha. All right. Before. All right.
Okay. And it quickly hit the bestseller list. Now, just as a reminder, I think everybody knows, but here's a summary from a Smithsonian Magazine article. Set in the tired old town of Macomb in the unglorious era of the Great Depression, this book tells the story of a widower attorney who tries in vain to defend a black laborer from a wrongful charge of assaulting a white woman. In 1964, Life magazine did a feature on Harper Lee that included taking pictures of her in her hometown, at least one of which was with her father, AC. I'm going to put that in the show notes. But my point is, one of those Life photos shows Harper Lee in the balcony of the local courthouse.
Yeah.
And the caption includes this quote from Harper: "The trial was a composite of all trials in the world, some in the South, but the courthouse was this one. My father's a lawyer, so I grew up in this room, and mostly I watched him from here." So the part I want to tease out just a little bit more there was where she said this trial was a composite of all trials in the world. Because remember, this is primarily a courtroom drama, this case with Tom Robinson's trial. But most sources speculate that a huge inspiration was the famous Scottsboro Boys trial. And a New Yorker magazine article published in 2006 actually mentions another case that reportedly served as an inspiration for the plot. They say that late in the 1990s, Harper Lee told a biographer of Richard Wright that she had based the trial of Tom Robinson on the experience of a man named Walter Lett, who was charged, it was a similar case.
Yeah.
And this was not something that her father had tried. Of course, this was something that did happen in her hometown, not something her father was involved with, but remember, he owned that local newspaper, and he was an editor,
covered it.
so he covered it. Yeah. So those are two of the inspirations they think that played a role in leading to this plot line. And then in terms of the success, remember that interview we talked about before, the radio interview from 1964? Well, in that, Harper said, quote, "I never expected any sort of success with Mockingbird. I was hoping for a quick and merciful death at the hands of the reviewers. But at the same time, I sort of hoped someone would like it enough to give me encouragement."
Oh, well, I think she got encouragement.
I'd say so, because instead of a quick and merciful death, that book spent something like 80 weeks on the bestseller list. We've already said it was awarded a Pulitzer Prize for Fiction in 1961. By 1962, the movie adaptation was already being filmed, with a limited premiere on Christmas Day of 1962
so fast.
And a wider release on Valentine's Day of 63. Wow.
That was fast.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the movie. You would think, with the book being so successful, that it would have been easy to get this movie made. I listened to an interview that Mary Badham gave. Mary played Scout when she was 10 years old in the movie, of course. So this interview was for the podcast Front Row Classics. It was given back in 2022 in conjunction with the movie's 60th anniversary. Can you believe it?
No.
I'm going to play a clip. This is where Mary's speaking about the movie. This is a little longer. It's about maybe a minute and a half, but I think you'll find it interesting.
And Hollywood didn't want this film. They didn't understand it. They didn't see the relevance of it. Bob Mulligan and Alan Pakula took this book everywhere trying to get one of the studios to sign on to it. And they wouldn't. And it wasn't until they sent the book over to Atticus and he read it, and then he said he couldn't wait for 8 o'clock the next morning so that he could call him and say, if you want me, I'm your boy. And
Wow.
then went into the studio and he put his money where his mouth was. You know, he's like, if you guys want in on this, you better come on, because we're doing this with or without you. And, you know, when Gregory Peck walks in the door and says, this is what we're doing, you know, the studio goes, oh, yeah, wait, maybe we ought to jump in on this, you know? Let's rethink this.
Well, I love that you just called him Atticus too,
yes.
and we've read and heard that that's how you referred to him even after the film, right? Through the rest of his life.
Yeah, because for me, that was who he was. And my father couldn't be there for me. And the Pecks were dear enough to invite me over to their house on the weekends. And I played with Anthony and Cecilia, and we became a family. I mean, we became very close. Because of our relationship, it was too formal to call him Mr. Peck, and I certainly wasn't going to call him Greg. I mean, come on. No, it was only natural. He became Atticus, and I became Scout, and that's the way it stayed.
That's so sweet.
Isn't it?
I got teary-eyed listening to that.
Okay, then I'm going to follow that up for just a second. Because this is so long, I wasn't planning to include this, but I'll mention it. They asked Mary at one point what her favorite scene was from filming, you know, and she said it's when it's bedtime and Atticus is reading to her. And she said, you know, she grew up kind of during that time frame. She said her dad didn't read to her at night. Like, that wasn't something they did in her family. They were a little traditional, and he was older, and he was in the military. And so she said that it was a really special thing to have Gregory Peck, you know, her father figure, reading to her so tenderly, and it was just such a sweet thing. Yeah, I loved it. All right, but going back to what Mary said in the clip that I played. Just to reiterate, the movie was directed by Robert Mulligan. The primary producer was Alan J. Pakula. And Horton Foote was the screenwriter who adapted Harper's book for the big screen. He ended up winning an Academy Award for his work.
He did great. The other thing from our interview, it's the mid-'60s and there's no call for this story? What?
They thought it was too controversial. See, that tells you this is before some of the big events of the civil rights movement had occurred. In some ways, this open conversations, people give it credit for moving things forward in some ways. I know. It really does make you think. So the movie was filmed on a soundstage, but the art director went above and beyond when it came to creating the fictional town of Macomb.
Yeah, he did.
The Monroe County Museum website has a timeline entry that they go through everything. But one of their little entries speaks to this point. Here's what it says. November 1961. Art director Henry Bumstead comes to Monroeville to research the set design for the film version of To Kill a Mockingbird. He takes photographs and makes drawings of the town, houses, and particularly the courtroom. He recreates almost exactly the Monroeville courtroom on a soundstage in Hollywood. He wins an Academy Award for his efforts.
Hey.
I know.
Wow.
I know. You'll see it. I'll put it in our show notes. You'll see a picture of the courtroom from the movie, and you'll see the actual courtroom with Harper Lee sitting in it, and you're like, wow. Yeah. So a New Yorker article said that Harper Lee originally wanted Spencer Tracy to play Atticus. Universal wanted Rock Hudson to take on the role, and Bing Crosby wanted himself to be it.
No, I'm sorry. I love Rock Hudson. No. Wrong choice.
Can you imagine? But of course, Gregory Peck won it.
He is Atticus Finch.
And then won an Academy Award for Best Actor. And his performance, I mean, obviously, we both feel the lasting impression he's made on us. But according to a Time magazine article, Atticus Finch would be named the American Film Institute's premier movie hero of the century and would inspire generations of idealistic young people to flood into law schools to become public interest advocates. Yeah, this is so interesting. A CNN article wrote, Finch was named the greatest hero in movie history in a 2003 American Film Institute survey. His reputation is such that a 2010 poll by the American Bar Association Journal was titled The 25 Greatest Fictional Lawyers, parentheses, who are not Atticus Finch.
Yes. Every male actor that we know of a certain age, their bucket list is they want to play Atticus Finch.
Yes. Yeah. So again, the movie was an incredible success, financially earning more than 6 times what it cost to make it, racking up 8 Academy Award nominations, and including those 3 wins that we've already talked about. And here is a clip from Harper Lee's radio interview where she shares just a tiny bit about her feelings regarding the film.
I felt the same way, Roy. As a matter of fact, I have nothing but gratitude to the people who made the film. It was a most unusual experience. I think even, of course, I'm no judge, and the only film I'd ever seen being made was Mockingbird, but there was an aura of feeling on the set. I went out and looked at them filming a little of it, but there was a feeling of such kindness, such it seemed to me to be such respect for the material that they were working with. Of course, I was delighted, I was touched, I was happy, I was exceedingly grateful. But it seemed to permeate everyone who had anything to do with the film, from the director, from Greg Peck, from the producer, down to the man who designed the sets, to the peripheral characters and the actors who were playing the smaller parts.
I love what she's saying, but also I'm immediately on a front porch in a rocking chair with a cup of sweet tea listening to her.
Yes.
Her voice.
Yes. I thought it added so much
Yeah.
to include that. But in summary, here we are. This woman took forever to write this book. It comes out. And it's a phenomenon. Mm-hmm. It's a phenomenon. There's nothing but praise being heaped on her, nothing but success coming her way.
It would terrify me too.
Well, but here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to circle us back to where we were before the break.
With her and her friend.
With her and her friend. So when In Cold Blood comes out in 1966, several factors people point to as to why the two of them started drifting apart. But one big speculation is that Harper Lee was hurt when that book came out, because she knew how much work she'd put into this, and the only acknowledgement she got was the dedication that said, "For Jack Dunphy and Harper Lee, with my love and gratitude." There was nothing thanking her in the acknowledgments. He was not telling people in interviews, Harper Lee was invaluable, I couldn't have done this without her. Those things were not being said.
That would be very hurtful.
And Jack Dunphy was Truman Capote's partner, longtime partner.
Okay.
So basically, it sounds almost like you're just dedicating
somebody
this
in my life that I love.
Yeah, people I care about. I'm
Yeah.
just dedicating this to people I care about, as opposed to somebody without whom I don't think I could have done this.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I think I said this off mic, but what we learned in school is that he did do it by himself. They never mentioned Harper and what she had done. He magically put together this book.
Now, Harper Lee's sister, Alice Finch Lee, we've talked about her several times. She, in later life, we'll come back to this as well, but she will become such a protector of Harper Lee.
Is she the one that lived to 100?
Yes, she is. Yes, she is. And she was fiercely
and still
protective of her sister.
Still
practiced law until
Yes.
she was 100.
Yes.
Absolutely, she did. She was sharp. But she said this about their friendship. Quote, "He became very jealous when she got a Pulitzer and he did not.
Oh.
He expected In Cold Blood to bring him one, and he got involved with drugs and heavy drinking, and that was it. It was not Nell Harper dropping him. It was Truman going away from her." So her theory is it was jealousy.
Okay.
It was jealousy. That's her theory. Other people will just say they were just so different. After her success, she gave those interviews in the very beginning, I think because she thought she had to. And then after a certain point, she realized she didn't, and she stopped. She would argue, her family and friends would argue, that she was never a recluse. Like, they don't think that that was a fair term, but she lived a very quiet life, stayed out of the spotlight, and that was who she was. She went to New York. She would write in her apartment. She would go visit her family in Alabama. That was her life. Meanwhile, you had Truman Capote, who was living
The high life.
The high life. Very flamboyant, in the middle of all the social circles. It couldn't have been any more different. Okay? Who knows? Probably a mixture of all those things.
Yeah.
And it's not to say that the two didn't occasionally
Touch
speak to
base.
each other or do things together,
just wasn't as
because they
close.
did. But yeah, they definitely were drifting apart. Now, from here on, we're going to focus primarily on Harper, although I have to come back to him one more time. But the thing is, here we are with Harper. She's been telling people, you said it earlier, she's working on another book. The people are waiting for her next book. I mean, it's been a phenomenon. Where's the next book? It never came out. And there would be times when they would tease, like, oh, it's going to be coming. And then there'd be a story about what happened. It's just, I think it's just exactly what you said. The pressure of producing another literary masterpiece absolutely shut her down. Harper reportedly once told her cousin, Dickie Williams, quote, when you're at the top, there is only one way to go.
Yep. Nowhere to go but down.
Okay. Which actually brings us back to Truman for just a second here. Over the years, especially with Harper failing to produce a second book, there's been a lot of speculation that it was actually Truman Capote who wrote To Kill a Mockingbird.
Really?
Oh, yeah. It's been a thing. It's been a thing. A Smithsonian Magazine article written in conjunction with the 50th anniversary of the novel's publication pointed out that Truman, who was known to be competitive and sometimes quirky, didn't really do a lot to quell those rumors if he heard them. Yeah. He would always kind of give a little vague response. And, you know, and again, this person who was writing the article speculated that Truman liked being given the credit, right? But the author of the article went on to offer this comment. This is a quote. The truth, as is evident from Capote's private correspondence, is that he did not write a word of Mockingbird, and that Lee, who assisted him as a reporter and researcher on In Cold Blood, contributed substantially more to Capote's 1966 blockbuster than he ever admitted. Still, the rumor persists, to the point where it is addressed and debunked in one of the Monroeville's museum exhibits.
Good grief.
Now, that New Yorker article I've mentioned before commented that the extensive communications between Harper and her editor, Tay, and other people at the publishing company also serves as strong evidence that she's the one who wrote it.
She wrote it.
Again, all this time's passing, people stopped asking about Harper's second book. And then in the mid-1980s, there was talk that one might be coming. Harper Lee began researching a nonfiction book about an Alabama preacher suspected of being a serial killer. It was tentatively titled The Reverend, but eventually she abandoned that. And then in 2007, Harper Lee was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom by President George W. Bush. Just in case you're wondering, the Medal of Freedom is given to people who have made remarkable contributions to the security or national interests of the United States, world peace, culture, or other private or public endeavors.
Interesting.
But it was that same year that Harper also suffered a stroke, which led her to move back to Monroeville, as her sister Alice was strongly encouraging her to do. Alice herself was in her mid-90s at that point, again, fiercely protective of Harper, and many actually also called her a gatekeeper for Harper. She was the person
you go through me.
Yeah, you had to get through Alice if you were going to get to Harper. But just a few months after Alice passed away in 2014, the shocking announcement came out that the manuscript of Harper Lee's Ghost Set a Watchman had been found. Now, I'm going to pause for a second. Do you want to add anything here? Do you remember this hoopla?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, did you read it?
I did not read the book.
I didn't either. And
I did that on principle.
Thank you. Same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because she never wanted it published. And I don't agree with what happened. I think that she was taken advantage of, if she was even in her right mind when she signed this, and it was a cash grab and not published until after she died, right? Mm-hmm. I don't agree.
No.
It was alive?
Published before she,
Okay,
before she passed.
but it was published after Alice died.
Yes. 100%.
Yeah.
I'll tell you my reason here in a second, okay? For context, this was the original story.
It's the original version.
The original version that Harper had tried to publish back in 1957. Remember, this is what she had brought with her when they had said, no, rewrite this. Tell it from the perspective of a child, you know? Everybody thought this original manuscript had been lost, including Harper Lee. This is what was put out there, was that everybody thought it was lost. Harper thought so too. But now that it was located, she did give her consent to have it published, is what people say. We'll come back to that.
As I shake my head vigorously.
Yes. The book came out in 2015, sold more than 1.1 million copies in a week, which HarperCollins announced made it the fastest selling book in the company's history. And according to a CBS News report, the book also set a record for one-day adult fiction sales for Barnes & Noble. So hugely, wildly sensational when it came out, right? But here's what you just alluded to. The novel also brought with it a lot of controversy controversy. First, let's give you a summary, okay? This is from Goodreads. 26-year-old Jean Louise Finch, or Scout, returns home from New York City to visit her aging father, Atticus. Set against the backdrop of the civil rights tensions and political turmoil that were transforming the South, Jean Louise's homecoming turns bittersweet when she learns disturbing truths about her close-knit family, the town, and the people dearest to her.
I think it was marketed as a sequel. It's not a sequel.
It's not a sequel.
It's
No.
the first draft.
Absolutely. Yeah. So the biggest reason for the controversy, and I think this is the biggest reason why I did not read this, was that the Atticus in this book, he's depicted as a racist.
Oh, really? I don't
Yeah.
even remember that part.
So that's, I mean, for all these years, Atticus had been held up as this paragon of virtue, you know, the wisest, most empathetic man, you know, and suddenly here he is very, very different in this book. I think that's why I didn't want to read it. I didn't want to read, you know, I have my Atticus, you know, so.
Which is probably why she did not want it published.
Well, it makes you wonder, but we're going to touch on that because here's where we're going to go. All right. The second reason that people felt that this was not okay is what you were talking about. They felt like Harper Lee had been taken advantage of in terms of giving her consent. This book was published just a year before her death, okay?
Yeah.
When a close friend described Harper as being in a wheelchair in an assisted living facility, nearly deaf and blind.
Yeah. No, there is no way. There is no way that she consented to this. And that's why I didn't read it.
And I didn't write this down, but supposedly there was a thing where someone did a biography on Harper Lee, and in the midst of the controversy around that, at some point, Alice had said something to the effect of Harper will sign, or I think she called her Nell.
She calls her Nell Harper.
Nell Harper will sign anything that somebody puts in front of her if she trusts that person.
Yes.
So many people thought that she'd been taken advantage of, and also people found it really convenient that this lost manuscript shows up right after Alice dies. It's been lost since 1957, but suddenly, just a few months after she passes, here it is. Okay.
It all stinks.
The last point is that other thing that we were alluding to. People believe she wouldn't have wanted this book to be published. Harper wouldn't have wanted this book to ever be published if she'd been in her right mind. They argue it's not even the story she wanted to tell anymore.
Right.
Like this was no longer, it's kind of like, you know, when people write a book, you go through, who knows, 5 or 10 drafts. Who wants to say, forget this last one that's polished and you know, just
Here,
the way, edited just the way I want it.
draft.
Yeah, you go back to that first one that's nothing like what I want it to be, right? So they argue that it was just an early draft. It no longer represented the story that she wanted to tell. And people would even say, if you read Go Set a Watchman, it doesn't even read in the same way. It's not as polished. It doesn't sound like a final
It's a first
work.
draft.
Yeah, yes, absolutely.
It makes me so mad.
So, again, Harper Lee passed away less than a year after that book was published. She died on February 19th, 2016 at the age of 89. And it was only 2 years later that a new adaptation of To Kill a Mockingbird, written by Aaron Sorkin.
Yep.
Did you know that?
I did.
We talked about him in our Few Good Men episode. It debuted on Broadway. Jeff Daniels, who played Atticus in the original Broadway production, called Aaron's version a rethink. And I saw a PBS feature for which Aaron Sorkin was interviewed. And in that feature, the narrator shared that, quote, Sorkin argued Mockingbird today should reflect an increased awareness of racism then and now. That meant a more meaningful role for the African-American characters, the defendant Tom Robinson and Finch's maid Calpurnia, end quote. Aaron Sorkin also decided, this is something he talked about, he also decided that Atticus needed to have more of an arc through the course of the story. Along those same lines, I saw Richard Thomas give an interview. He commented that he thought it was good, that Atticus needed to be pulled down from his pedestal, and so he felt like this new adaptation was a better version, you know, or he appreciated it for the more contemporary times. Okay. Now, there were some copyright battles.
Yes.
Harper Lee's estate felt like this varied too much from the original work, and so there have been some legal battles, a couple of them. So far, it seems as though Aaron Sorkin's Children's version has won. They've been given permission for the play to continue. They've been given permission. The newest thing was, can it be made available for stock in amateur productions? And it was decided that it can. Okay. And that's pretty recent. In 2025, I think, was when that one was settled. So it seems as though the new adaptation is good to go. By the way, I haven't told you this. When I watched the play, do you know who Mrs. DeBose was?
Wasn't it? It was Mary, right?
It was Mary.
Mary was in it.
It
I remember
was
that.
Mary.
Yes.
I could not believe it.
You got to see Mary. Was it in Louisville?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, it came to Louisville. Kirk loved it. Kirk said that that's
The best
pretty
version?
much his favorite play, I believe, if I recall correctly.
The new version.
The new version.
Okay, gotcha.
You know what? Let's save that point
Okay.
because that's going to lead us into our armchair, and
Okay.
we're almost there. So let
Okay.
me wrap something up, and we'll come right back to
Okay.
that. I had not even seen this. I totally missed this. But just this past October, they published another work by Harper Lee. Were you aware of that?
No.
It was a collection of unpublished short stories and previously uncollected essays that they found in her New York City apartment after her death. So this came out again just this past October. Now, the consensus seems to be that it's not of the same quality of To Kill a Mockingbird. They interviewed some of her relatives who were fine with it being published. Their comment was, these were not things that Harper Lee was in process of writing. These were things she had been sending off to places trying to
Okay.
get published.
Okay.
So she had the intent to publish,
Okay.
and therefore they felt like it was okay.
It was okay.
But here's something that was said in The Guardian. This was a review. A little piece of it said, if we regard this book as literature, it is an unqualified failure. But these juvenile stories and essays shed fascinating light on the repression of Lee's early life. When I just kind of skimmed through reviews and looked at some of the critical,
So this was her early work.
a lot of them were early works.
Like the first 10 years she was in New York sending stuff off.
Well, it didn't say that it was only during that time.
Okay, because I wonder,
frame.
did she keep writing?
I believe some of these were from later. But I think the point is, okay, I'm making assumptions here, so don't hold me to this.
Okay.
I don't know that she gave these works the same.
all?
Right.
Her
Her
own?
saying, I don't know if they went through multiple revisions and editing and,
Right.
and the type of process
Right.
that writers go
Right.
through.
Like the amount of work that I put into a discussion post is not going to be the same amount of work that I put into a paper that I have to turn in and a book. It's just different levels of, yeah, that makes sense.
Right. And honestly, even though her family members made that comment that these were works that she had tried to publish, there was a different reviewer who said some of these didn't seem like they were even a specific genre. Like you couldn't say this seems to be an essay or this seems to be a short story. It really did almost seem like she just sat down and just captured an impression on paper.
It's a blog.
So yeah, some of these were just vignettes or anecdotes. So anyway, it is out there.
Okay.
All right.
Armchair psychologist.
So here's what I would ask you for the armchair question. What are your thoughts about the publication of these works? I know you've already touched on your thoughts about Go Set a Watchman. And we now have this new collection of short stories and essays.
What do I think?
Yes, what do you think? And the play. You have thoughts about the play.
I don't know so much about the play because I haven't seen the second version. So I feel kind of ill-equipped to comment on it other than to say, I mean, who wrote the first adaptation of the play? I would think that's the person that would weigh in on, who wrote the version of the play before Aaron Sorkin rewrote it. She didn't write the play. Harper didn't write the play. But that seems more like a different field. And if she was okay with it getting made into a play, she had to give her approval for that first person. So that's the version she wanted out there. And you can kind of maybe weigh in with your experience on the rewrite. I don't know. I haven't seen it. But gosh, it's so hard. I don't approve of Go Set a Watchman. And I've already said why. With the maybe it should have been the way it was marketed. I don't know how the essays were marketed. If she was sending them off intending for publication, that feels a little bit more, I guess, in a gray area. Like, would she have wanted it now published? Probably not, because she would have said, this is what I'm known for. I'm going to curate this. I'm going to keep this particular image, this polished. Maybe she didn't want the other stuff. But if they had marketed as like P.T. Barnum, see Harper Lee's early works, and you knew it wasn't going to be as polished, maybe that would be a little bit better, but I still don't know.
It's interesting because I'm listening to you and I'm seeing in you the same thing that I felt, which is I'm so conflicted because my first instinct is it is so unfair. She protected her legacy
for years, her
for
whole life,
decades. She said, I have nowhere to go but down. She would not put anything else out there. And then when she's at the end of her life and possibly not in her right mind, they publish a book that is really just an early draft. Right.
Undoes basically her father's legacy because Atticus is her father.
Right. And again, I think the reason I never read it was because I loved Atticus so much and I loved the first book so much that I didn't want that to be changed for me. Now, here's what's interesting though, because, and this goes along with both points, I think, the play as well as this book. This has really made me think. This whole process of researching this and going in on this deep dive has really made me think. And even though I think it wasn't fair to Harper and maybe it should never have been published because she's the author and we should always respect what the author wants, I think selfishly as a society, I think we're better for it having come out.
What, Go Set a Watchman? Or the
Go Set a Watchman, and I suspect Go Set a Watchman led to the new adaptation of the play. You know, the version that's out now, the more contemporary view. Back in that time frame, I think To Kill a Mockingbird was groundbreaking in some ways. I think that it didn't just hit on the issue of racism, although that was certainly, I think, the most powerful message. But honestly, if you go back and you look at it, it talked about mental illness, you know, it talked about substance abuse.
Yeah.
It talked about, you know, people being looked down on because of poverty. Like, it really hit on a lot of issues that are still really prevalent today. But of course, race, you know, was the huge one. And so in some ways, when it was written at that time, I think that it caused people to have conversations. It caused maybe things to hopefully move forward a little bit. But now here we are, and we still have all those same issues.
Yeah.
We still have all those same issues. And I think that by putting out the new version of the play, I think it's causing us to have conversations again. And it's causing us to think about these issues that are still really huge issues in our society. And so it's hard because you're kind of like, oh, I want to hold true to this
Her
book,
vision.
this vision that we've had all this time. But at the same time, boy, is it thought-provoking.
It is. And at a certain point, all of our work, anyone who writes anything, anyone who creates anything, it's going to enter the public domain, and another person can take that work and do whatever they want with it. I guess my issue comes down to, while it was in her control and it's not in the public domain yet, we still need to follow what she wanted.
So with that in mind, do you think you think maybe Harper Lee's estate should have had more of a standing when it came to copyright infringement, the things that they brought up in terms of the play adaptation?
I'm not sure about the play adaptation. That's still more of a gray area for me because I don't know enough about who wrote the original. Did she have nothing to do with it? Was it just made outside of her influence and okay, great, I loved it, or did she have a hand in it?
I guarantee it had to have some kind of approval because she had some great protection in terms of. Yeah. I mean, I did not research that, so I cannot speak.
Yeah, I guess I'm sticking more with the book and then Go Set a Watchman. She did not want it published. It should not have been published.
Well, let's end on a happier note
Please
than
do.
that. Tell me something that speaks to you. What is one thing that you take away from Harper Lee's work or this story of her journey in being a writer?
Oh, goodness. I had something I wanted to talk about with the book, and I don't remember what it was now. What do I take from her journey of being a writer? Well, I talked about this earlier, and comparing her to Agatha Christie or even John Grisham, what I take from it is, it's something I am truly struggling with, and I have thought about her and Agatha, and now John I will think about at this point in my own, not really a career, that I gotta keep going. I cannot let, and again, what I wrote was not even mine. It was Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, and I wrote a particular adaptation, and it wasn't like, nobody's throwing me a Tony, but it went well.
Right.
It went
Very
really
well received.
Really well received. And it scared me because it was the biggest audiences that have ever come to see something, again, not really mine, but my take of it. And I was like, oh, oh, now what? Now there's this pressure to do well, and it kind of crippled me a little bit. So I thought about her, and I thought about Agatha, and I thought, you gotta push through this. You can't let this stop you. And okay, so maybe the next thing I write will be kind of a stinker, but then maybe the one after that will be better. You know, you want everything to be better, but she's encouraging me in a way that she doesn't intend to, and that I don't want to let what happened to her happen to me.
Yeah, that's an amazing lesson to take away from this. Yeah. I don't even know where to begin. I would just, I guess since I haven't brought this up, I'll just make a different point. In that little radio interview that she gave in 1964, the interviewer asked her one of her goals as a writer, and she said that her way of life, small town life in the South, was disappearing, rapidly disappearing. And one of the things that she hoped to do was to kind of preserve what it was like to live in this small town. And she said, I guess, in other words, I just want to be a Jane Austen of the small town. That's paraphrasing, but that's basically what she said. And so I think one of the things I take away from this was what a beautiful, eloquent voice she had.
Yeah.
Her own, and then also through the eyes of Scout.
Yeah.
I think that it's going to live forever through her book and also through her movie and now also through the play.
Both versions.
And the themes are just as strong as ever, and we can learn just as much from them as ever. So cheers to Harper Lee.
Absolutely. Cheers.
If you love what we do, please rate and review our show or become a supporter through Buy Me a Coffee or Patreon. Whether a single gift or recurring monthly donation, your support is what allows us to keep the tea brewing.
Subscribe on your favorite podcast app or the Scandal Water Podcast YouTube channel, and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Show notes are available at our website, scandalwaterpodcast.com, where you can also access the merch store and more.
This episode was executive produced by Candy Thomas, that's me, and Ashley Raymer Brown,
That's me.
It was researched and written by Candy Thomas and edited by Ashley Raymer Brown.
A special thank you to Josh Martin, who wrote, composed, and performed the Scandal Water theme and other music. Matt C. Adams, who created the artwork, and Joshua Reith, who designed our website and provides ongoing technical support.
As a reminder, this podcast is purely for entertainment purposes. The thoughts and opinions of the host during each episode of Scandal Water are their own and do not reflect the opinions of any future guests, advertisers, or clearly professional psychologists. Thanks for listening.